All right. So some news today. I've converted to becoming a pharaoh. We was kings and all that. So, but the point is, it's a hot bath here again. Not as hot as the other time, but it's just a nice cold towel on my head is pretty good. Becoming a towel head is just what the occasion calls for. So, as you may have noticed, I skipped yesterday's video, and part of it's like, I don't want to do another video, or, I can't upload a video, but that's the video, meh. So like, whatever. I even had this out, what I want to read about today. I even had it printed out, I had it going, but I was like, I was just in a shitty mood. But the mood's over, thankfully, so I guess I'm in a deficit of one video, and maybe we'll make that up. We'll just add that to the deficit spending of this show. So we're down one video. I got to do 2 videos in one day at some point, and we'll do that. Maybe, hopefully. But the point is, so we talked about the book, right, Toxic Parents by Susan Ford. Hold a mirror up to the screen to see it, right? But the point is, I then read an article, an interview with the author who said, here's a new book, right? And that book is Mothers Who Can't Love, right? I don't have the book. I downloaded an online version, converted to PDF, doesn't matter. But the point is, my whole thing was I wanted to read this new book because there was this weird thing where in the acknowledgments, the author in the 1989 book says, oh, my mother changed and it's so wonderful. But then in the interview that she wrote about mothers who can't love, she said, oh yeah, my mother was a total bitch, and I had to wait for her to die until I wrote this book, otherwise she'd make it all about her. So when she said in 1989, oh, my mother's changed, yay, maybe not so much. So I was thinking, based on that, is there going to be anything interesting in here that is new and goes into that whole thing of the therapist acknowledging that her own mother is terrible? And the other thing that I kind of missed about this book, or didn't see in the book, which is it's not really your mother, it's not really your father, it's everyone else. Now, I've probably listened to more than half the book. More than half the book, I would say, over the last couple day or two. And here's the thing, it's if you have those issues, in the same way that I really like this book in 2006, but had shortcomings, so does this. And again, I haven't finished it yet, but it does go into, in chapter 1, again, Mothers Who Can't Love by Susan Ford. Again, it's flipped, so I don't know, whatever. Again, I don't have page numbers. This is immediately in chapter 1. And the heading is Other People Don't See What You See. And this is very shortly after the introduction in chapter 1. So I'm just going to read it, hopefully without too much commentary. It's just 2 pages and it's big, so I'll just read it and hopefully... Oh, good Lord. Other people don't see what you see. Struggling with the pain and repercussions of having an unloving mother can be intensely lonely and isolating. People with reasonably healthy mothers have a tough time understanding that all mothers are not like theirs, and it's quite common for even a well-meaning friend or relative to discount an unloved daughter's pain or blame her when she looks for sympathy. My client, Valerie, a 32-year-old computer programmer, came to me hoping to overcome the shyness and anxiety that had made her feel stuck and discouraged about her work and social life. It was hard to break out of her shell, she said, especially because people just don't understand me. When I asked for an example, she described a recent incident. So Valerie says, a month ago, I enrolled in an adult art class. It's not an adult fart class, no. No. Adult art class, something I've always wanted to do. The instructor, Terry, was very encouraging about my watercolors, and despite a 25-year difference in our ages, we became quite close. Terry told me that she was going to put on an exhibit of student work, and I was thrilled when she told me she had selected 2 of my pieces. Suddenly, I burst into tears. When she asked me what was going on, I told her that I'd had a huge fight with my mother on the phone that morning, and I didn't want to invite her. She said she was eager to meet my mother, who's an interior designer and also a frustrated artist, though I didn't mention that. Terry brought up my mom a couple times, so against my better judgment, I sent her an email. So Mom comes to the exhibit and praises everyone else's work, and she's totally lukewarm about mine. But of course, she was her most charming and effusive to Terry. After she left, Terry said to me, quote, "I would love to have a lovely mother like that. I would give anything if my mother were still alive. I hope you know how lucky you are." Me. I said, well, you see, isn't always what you see isn't always what you get. My mother can be very self-centered, critical, and competitive. It was as if Terry didn't hear a word I said. She just repeated, "You should thank your lucky stars. You have a mother who cares enough about you to come to see your work." Man. Valerie, so this is back the therapist writing the book. Valerie felt frustrated and unheard by a woman she thought was her friend. And if the pain is deep for an adult like Valerie, imagine how much worse it was for a young, dependent girl or your own younger self as she tried to feel heard and understood. So there's one more example. Again, this is just another page. Colleen, a single 28-year-old manager for a supermarket chain, told me that for as long as she could remember, she had suffered from a chronic low-grade depression. She was on medication that had helped her considerably, but she had enough insight to see that there was a lot of unfinished business in her past that was contributing to her depressed feelings, and she wanted my help to sorting through it. After I found out a little bit more about her, I asked her to tell me something about her childhood. Colleen says, "I had no one to talk to. It was no bed of roses. Nobody listened to me. I just stuffed my sadness. If I tried to talk to my father about my mother, he would say, just be nice to her. Once I got to stay overnight with my Aunt Gina. She asked me how things were at the home. I felt pretty safe with her. She'd always been okay with me. So I told her, I think there's something's wrong with Mom. She's always screaming at me and telling me I'm not worth anything. Gina listened quietly and seemed to understand, but then she said, you have to try to keep her happy. She doesn't mean those things. She's very unhappy with your father, and if it wasn't for you, she would have left him a long time ago. You owe her. Don't be so sensitive." Meh. She sounded really upset with me. I felt even worse after I told her, and I thought, great, now she's mad at me too. I wish I'd never said anything. The great common denominator among women with unloving mothers is the longing for validation, to find someone who will say, yes, what you have experienced really happened. Yes, your feelings are justified. I understand. Great pressure is brought to bear on daughters to not tell about the verbal, emotional, and even physical cruelties of their past and present. As you can see, for children, the rules become clear early. Don't tell anyone, don't even tell yourself. That's how you learn to bury, minimize, and mistrust your own truth. So that is it. The very next paragraph and next setting, there's only a paragraph. We're going to read that later because it kind of dovetails into this. But, so here's the thing. So you got the first story with Valerie, and Valerie's friend, Terry, is basically like, oh, your mother showed up and was gawking at all the other art. And oh, it's so nice she showed up. You should just appreciate her, right? And so the good thing here is, what's her face, Susan Ford, the therapist who writes this, gets that other people don't see what you see. So that's good. But the rest of the book that I read about does not deal with this, that it's not really my shitty mother, it's that no one else sees it. Now, this was my big problem with the Toxic Parents book too, is it's, okay, toxic parents, they're shit, fine. But it's that, quote, other people don't see what you see. It's that problem. And that book didn't really go into it. It didn't go into, okay, so it's not just my parents, it's kind of right. Nobody really sees this. And I don't see the rest of the book going into it. It's kind of like, okay, where do you go? Where do you go to talk about these things? It just doesn't exist. It doesn't go into it because... Now, okay, so getting just back into the text. So Susan Ford's explanation is that people with reasonably healthy mothers have a tough time understanding that all mothers are not like theirs. Right. Really though? Because if your mother's great, part of that being great would be that you could see what Valerie saw, that, oh, everyone else... that my mother is praising every other piece of art, but she's being a bitch about mine, right? She's just kind of digging that in there. So part of my definition for whatever healthy parents you would have, or healthy understanding of things, is you would be able to even, maybe not even on the, well, you would at least see it. Like, that's the strange thing is, oh, all these other reasonably healthy people. But they just don't see it. Why? Because why is it healthy? Why is that person defined to be healthy if they don't see this kind of dynamic that's happening here? How is that healthy? Right? That's not. Come on. So that's my problem with it is, yeah, other people don't see what you see because why? Maybe their parents weren't so great. Because, it's not like, whatever Valerie's story is, whenever she was younger, could she talk to anyone else about it? So how great are those parents if they're so healthy that you can't talk to them about your stuff, right? I mean, come on. So that kind of buries the lead there, and it's in some ways the whole thing is it's not toxic parents, it's not mothers who can't love. It's why is everyone else like that? Why is everyone incapable of seeing the more extreme stuff? Because they're not that great themselves, I would editorialize in. And let's look at the second story. Colleen, as a young girl, went to Aunt Gina. Well, there was also the father, right? So Colleen went to the father, right? And the father says, oh, just be nice to her. Meh. Right? Just be nice. Just enable her. Just be nice. We don't want to call her out because then she'll start screaming at us. So just be nice, don't upset her, don't say anything, shut up, right? And then Aunt Gina's the same way. Aunt Gina, she's, so when the little girl's like, I think something's wrong with mom. She's always screaming at me and telling me I'm not worth anything. The response to that is, you have to try to keep her happy. She doesn't mean it. Again, it's the same, just shut up, don't mention anything because she'll start screaming at us. So you're going to throw the little girl to the wolves because you don't want to deal with the wolves. And that's the dynamic there. This is exactly the same dynamic that you see with alcoholics. I think I mentioned this before, right? So you have the alcoholic, you have the enablers, and the person's like, hey, this person's drunk. They're always just obnoxious. And, they're driving drunk and they're hitting the mailbox. Just don't say anything. It's the same fucking dynamic. So when it's, oh, everyone's so healthy. No, they're not. Everyone else is a fucking enabler of this bullshit. Maybe they're not the active abusers, but they're all fucking enablers. Okay, the fact that the father doesn't bring it out, but there's no one outside the family who brings this out and says, yeah, she's a fucking cunt. She's a cunt. Okay? Nobody brings this up. So don't tell me it's toxic parents and mothers who can't love. That's a very myopic focus. And again, the sad part is that even the therapist brings this up, at least for 2 pages here. I didn't see too much else about the bird's eye view of other people don't see what you see. But that's the big fucking problem here. It's not even, okay, you have shitty parents, fantastic. But no one else sees. Imagine if you were stolen from. Okay? Like, I don't know, someone stole $100 from you. Like, it kind of mattered, it'd be worth pursuing. And everybody had these bullshit answers. You were a victim, and people came up with these bullshit enabling techniques, enabling the abuser to say, oh, well, well, you get it. I mean, whatever. It's not pointing out the abuse. So everyone's an enabler in this stuff. It's not just, oh, here's the mother, here's the father. It's everyone else. I can talk to anyone else about this, still can't. It's the same bullshit. Right? I think I've repeated this before, but this is the important thing. This is why this is where that book, Toxic Parents, just was like, oh, it's really good. It is kind of validating that someone's saying, yeah, your parents are crap and that's fine. You're not crazy for thinking that. It's nice to see that, but it's not just them, because could I talk to anyone about this book? Was there anybody I went to high school with that I could talk to about this book? No. Was there any adult high school, was there anybody else like, hey, this thing is happening? The letter that I ended up writing in 2006, December of 2006, that was thanks to this book, a recommendation here. Could I read this letter and say, hey, my parents are shit. What's up with this? Where are the people who aren't shit like this? Where could I go and talk? Nowhere. And that still is largely true. So that's the big issue. It's other people don't see what you see, but not like 3 other people. Like, it's there's nowhere to show up. That dynamic is it's just a society of enablers to all this bullshit. That's all it is. So anyways, that's 15. Oh, this is great, 15 minutes. I think we made it up for yesterday's video, but no, that's going to have to be an extra one. So that's what I've part of our series, Everything Sucks and There's No Hope, right? So how fun. Ooh. Cold water here. There we go. All right, so now that we're back from my water break, because that's what that is. Right. Let's read just a little bit from the very next section because it really dovetails into this. So the next section is, again, hold your mirrors up to the screen so you can read it. How maternal rejection is internalized. That impulse to make the best of what you have where your mother is concerned may seem positive, but it masks a whole system of fault lines that run below the surface of your life, a sort of emotional earthquake. Maintaining the grin and bear it status quo keeps the peace, but it's less a choice than a form of paralysis brought about by shame and fear. What keeps you in the dark is a neat bit of emotional alchemy and amnesia. All the external messages you've gotten whenever you've tried to tell the truth about your mother echo back at you from the inside as powerful emotions, and she gives some examples. You feel tremendous disloyalty for criticizing her by telling the truth. After all, she gave you life. You feel ashamed. All mothers love their children, and they must have a good reason if they don't. Meh. You doubt your perceptions and wonder if you're too sensitive or just feeling sorry for yourself. So that's it. That's just the last couple of paragraphs. And the reason it dovetails into this is whereas she kind of hits the nail on the head with other people don't see it, although she kind of then doesn't really talk about it and the big implications of it, that everyone else sucks. This is another thing that's been a common theme through the rest of the book that I read, the half of it or so, is it's always these sort of self-hating women or self-hating personalities. And I mentioned this before, I came up with a really good phrase for this. It's a self-hating personality or something, where you feel tremendous disloyalty for criticizing or you internalize it. It's not just that you realize cognitively that if I criticize my mother or whoever else, they're going to bite my ass out. I don't know, bite my tongue. I don't know. They're going to not like when I criticize them, right? They're not going to like it, so I'm not going to do it. I don't want to deal with it. You get it, okay? It's internalization is, it's all that, but then you realize, oh, but they probably have good reason, and oh, I don't want to be disloyal, and you feel it, like, oh, I don't want to be disloyal, as opposed to, I don't care if I'm disloyal, but they're going to, scream at me, so I'm going to pick my fights and maybe not bring it up, right? You accept, you internalize this. So if, let's say, right, you basically just internalize that that's just what it is, right? Okay. Well, I don't really have that, right? Because like half the book is it's okay to be disloyal, and here's the, I don't have this. I don't think I've ever had this, functionally speaking. When I finally realized I had, I guess, same-sex attractions back in the old days. That's been a while, huh? I kind of had this self-hating thing about it, but I was so, what do you call it? I was so repressed about it. It wasn't even a self-hating thing. I was just in almost total denial about it even. But the point is, I don't have that. I haven't had that since about that one thing, maybe 20 years ago, I guess, 15, 20 years, who knows? What is the math? Not math show, we don't do that here. But I get the experience of it. I get the experience of, oh, you internalize other people's judgments of you, and that's just the kind of shame. But I don't think I've had that with parents either, though. I've never had that, oh, well, my mother is going to fear this, so me. I might have recognized, oh, I don't want to pick this fight because this bitch is going to go off even more. Or, hey, let's see that today, so let's make her go off, right? or let's not hold anything back. I don't think I baited her on purpose for shits and giggles, but, if you defend yourself, yeah, sometimes they scream back at you. But I don't have that, and that's a lot of the, a lot of the rest of the book, and a lot of the Toxic Parents book was kind of like, it's okay to feel this. It's okay to go against parents sometimes, And it reminds me of like trying to feed a squirrel, like they're hesitant, you're like, you're slowly holding. It's like, but that's not me. I don't need to be convinced. I don't need to be convinced of that. So don't spend the time on the convincing me I can criticize shitty parents I haven't seen in many years. The other people don't see what you see. It's not just a smattering. It's fucking everywhere, right? It's just that is just not a value to reassess these relationships and dynamics. It's just everyone's on autopilot or something. And then the one guy or whatever who brings it up, it's like, no one wants that. So yeah, that's it. So that's it. I think I'm just repeating the same thing for the millionth time, but it does bear repeating. So I guess that's it for now.